Happy holidays. This is the A to Z podcast.
Man, don't say the word holiday. I just sat for 3 hours doing the Trib show, and people bitch and moan about, yeah, you got to say Christmas. You can't say holiday. People are really like.
Well, that's an interesting debate.
It's not, well, but who cares?
Well, exactly.
Like,
because I don't care if anybody says Merry Christmas
me
to
either.
me.
I don't get caught up either way.
Right.
Like, people are assholes for the most part anyway. So it's like, if somebody was willing to be nice enough to say, hey, happy holidays to you, or Merry Christmas, think about what type of, sometimes we say words you shouldn't hear on here. I'm just going to say it like that. But it's like the person that holds the door for you. Am I really going to be mad that they held the door for me? Somebody tried to say a nice comment, and there are dickheads out there that would rather complain how somebody said something nice to you.
Right.
That's like the girls that we both tried to date in high school and college. You'd be like, I said hi. I tried to buy you a burger at Swenson's, and they're like, you're ugly. And it's like, that's not the point. I was nice. You could at least let me down nicely.
Sometimes I'm like, I hear Merry Christmas, and then like I have to, and I'm like, wait a second, we're acquaintances. We don't have to hug just because it's Christmas.
Right.
Like, fist bumping out.
Well, yeah. But why do people get caught up in that? Like, and that's the one thing that I've let myself out the house, unfortunately, this week.
Well, yeah, so you're all out of whack as it is.
Yeah, man. I'm realizing I don't like people no more. Like, I want to go back into my bubble. Like, there's a nice bubble I got in Wadsworth. I got to put one up because ain't no black people around me. I'm just saying, I love the people that are around me, but there ain't many. I'm the chocolate chip, and there's a one chip cookie.
I told you that for a year and a half before you moved there.
No doubt. Hey. But them people good to me, the ones that I'm around. I love my neighbors. I know some of them listen to podcasts. I just can't understand, and this is a personal thing. I just can't understand somebody hearing someone say that. They're like, I can't believe you didn't say Merry Christmas.
Well, people got issues.
Really?
I've never been a huge Christmas person. We are not Christmas people.
You're all Jehovah's Witnesses?
No. But
what's up, Miss Jackson? I can't talk to you the way I want to because Daddy listens now.
True story. True story. 1 year, Brody asked for a Festivus pole.
Yeah.
And Mom put up a Festivus pole.
Wow. How'd that work?
So people have called me the Grinch, various people in my life.
I call you,
and I get it. Truth is, I'm not like many times this month I've caught myself cruising down the highway singing some songs.
Yeah.
So it's like Survey Wednesday. Where are you at with Christmas? I can't help myself. I'm sorry.
It must be where we're at. It brings out the absolute worst in both of us. The best and worst.
I don't know. I've been pretty cheery with it. Like, so some of my closest friends who we hang out with in the summer live on the other side of the lake. Like Friday night, we're all getting together. The kids, the adults, everybody. Like, I took real joy in buying stuff for their spoiled ass kids. Like, it was fun.
I was gonna say kids changes it. I didn't care anything
because
about
I take
Christmas.
a different approach.
Oh,
to
absolutely,
it.
you do. Right.
I'm going to buy something specific that's going to get a laugh.
You're going to buy something that the kids are going to remember.
It might give me an eye roll or a lecture via text.
But the kids are going to remember.
Yes,
I know how you roll, and it's good.
Yeah.
That's like last night. I text my wife because she does all the shopping, and we make it work how it works. But if I have an idea, so out of nowhere, I text her Rock'em Sock'em Bops, and she's like, "What?" And I'm like, AJ loves those shits. I was like, buy a couple of them. She's like, so we're going to buy like this old school thing that makes him want a box? I was like, absolutely. I was like, he loves it. I go, I already got a picture up on IG of him and my dad fighting with him. It's perfect. And she's like, okay, I guess I'll stop and get it. And she's like, even though this is going to lead to bad stuff. And I was like, no, it's not. Every kid needs to know how boxing works. And speaking of boxing, this is going to be a different A to Z. Not different in a bad way.
This is going to be an incredible A to Z is what it's going to be.
We're hoping, but I don't even need to hope. I think it's going to be really good. Tell them why.
Well, so we're going to have a guest. His name is Tim May. See, the old radio trick is you got to tease the guest.
Yeah,
now you guys can read. We're going to put it out there. You click through via Twitter or whatever. Tim has been covering the Buckeyes for a long time. He's been writing for the Dispatch longer than we've been alive. I'm sure I'll bring that up.
Yes, you have to.
But he is a hilarious guy. He is a knowledgeable guy. He's a little instant famous, or at least back.
Yeah.
And, not only because this has been his retirement tour, but he was a central figure. That's fair to say, right on that Buster Douglas 30 for 30.
He's a big part of that 30 for 30 that everybody just watched on Buster Douglas and Mike Tyson. I think it's 42-1. I think it was
right. And so most people know him as that and have seen his byline. But he's an all-time character.
All time.
Real energy, real comedy, and just, like I said, we're going to get out of the way is what we're going to do. So this is 5 or 6 years ago, Dre. I'm filling in hosting on a radio show here in town.
Make it $10 an hour.
and we're gonna get talk Buckeyes. And I'm like, yeah, whatever.
He would pay.
By the time I paid for
He
parking,
paid for parking. He was broke between gas and parking. He lost money to go on the radio. Congrats.
yeah. So I get a hold of Tim and I said, "Can we have you on?" And he says, "Sure." And I knew him. I didn't know him that well, but just like I said, always laughed at him, always read him. And a guy that's done it for this long has a certain love for things. Yeah. And then Tim's storytelling ability, I mean, he can bring anything to life. So anyway, so we have him on and we just talk for like maybe 15 seconds, not even that much. And I come on and I ask him a question and he goes, "Well, first of all, it's always an honor to be on the Zac Jackson show." And I'm just
and it's not even your show. But he's so set up.
He laughs at himself.
Right, he loves it.
Right.
Brian Windhurst, this interview is why Zac loves laughing at his own jokes. Trust me.
Yeah. So speaking of that, first of all, I'm going to do the announcements. So the A to Z podcast is sponsored, as always, by Scene, by the Honeymoon Grill, and by American Fireworks.
Thank you to all of those. Happy holidays. Merry Christmas to all of those. We appreciate you guys being on board. I know there's other companies that want to be aboard going across to 2019, and you should. We're going to have a really good year. We've had a really good year this year. We appreciate all of you that are behind our brand. We do things a little bit differently. But we do it our way, and we try to stay consistent. And I know that everybody wants to talk about Baker Mayfield every 15 minutes, and we get that. You should be excited about that. But thanks for the ride, and keep riding with us, because there's going to be big things that keep going. Because the one thing that both of us idiots have agreed to, no matter what happens in our real life, we're always going to do this. Even we'll be two bums at 60, like, oh, you got to record.
No, and I'm glad you said that, because we bust each other's balls, and a lot of it is laughing, and some of it is serious.
Yeah,
we're in this together. I say A to occasionally Z. Sometimes I go off on tangents, and he lets me talk for 10 minutes and comes back and jabs me right at it. We argue in the mornings. Yes. We argue at night like the old married couple that we are.
Yes.
But we are in this together, and we are always jockeying, you're right, to get our egos, our opinions, our words in the way.
Yes.
But when we bring Tim May on, shit, we ain't going to get a word in.
We ain't getting a word in, so we got to get him now. By the way, next time you bring up CPT time, I'm going to bring up my hat. Thanks, bitch.
Anyway, you can look at that on Instagram, on social media. We're at Akron Jackson, at Dre Nup. So one quick story. So we're going to talk, and I never knew this. I never knew Tim covered the fight in the Tokyo.
Neither did I.
So long story short, I was in 7th grade. Went to the last Indians game at Cleveland Stadium with Mr. Adamson, who was like a second father to me.
Yeah.
Rob, you know him well.
Yeah.
A lot of you listening know him. Rob is my best friend from way back.
How weird is that? Both of our best friends growing up, his name is Rob.
Yeah.
And they're both some degenerates.
And they both got a lot of problems.
Yeah.
But anyway, so we're going to Cleveland Stadium, and we stop off White Pond Drive. And Mr. Adamson's like, "We're going to pick up my friend John." Okay. Well, he didn't tell me John was one of Buster Douglas's trainers.
John from the 30 for 30.
John Russell.
John Russell. Yeah. Holy.
So I'm in this living room and I'm in 7th grade, so I don't really know what I want to do.
Yeah.
But I know what I've done every day since I was 5, and that's read the sports page. It's all
absolutely.
what I obsessed over. And Dre, he has this framed cover of the Japanese newspaper. And you can't read the writing, obviously.
He's a character, too, by the way.
Can't read the writing. But this large picture that takes up 60% of it is Buster standing over Tyson. Oh. And I never forgot that as long as I lived. So we fast forward.
Is that when Mr. Adamson was helping that boxer out?
No, this is the second part.
Okay, my bad.
So we go to the early I can't tell you the year, but I'm glad you brought up Brian Windhurst. We go to the early 2000s, and Mr. Adamson was involved with this young boxer named Tony the Tiger Hanshaw, who was from here, had some roots here. And boxing was starting to die then, but it wasn't like it is now. Right. It was still out there. It was still on live TV. Pay-per-views were still popular. Guys were still making a lot of money that were doing well. So he takes me and his youngest son, Mike. It's Canton Civic Center, Tuesday night fights. Big deal.
Right.
So I'm in my young 20s. I've started to make my way. I don't know shit. I think I do. Yeah. I'm not shit. I think I am. Right?
Still to this day.
So we sit down and remember 3 things about that night. One, I met Vonda Ward. This is when she was at her peak.
was a beast.
And it was cool. And see, I was such a nerd that I remember following her high school basketball and college basketball career.
She was a beast at Magnificat or what?
Trinity.
Trinity.
Yeah,
yes,
when they had that AAU team and all that stuff. So I remember that. That was pretty cool. And she was holding the belt.
Yeah.
Then we met Buster, who was there and knew Paul because of their connection. And then the actual fight. So we're in the back of Canton Civic Center, which on TV – they make look good.
Right.
But it's this rotting ass place, right?
They still play games there, right?
Yeah, they still play games there. I'm sure they fixed it up for the Canton
They
Charge.
did. They put some money in there for the Charge.
So we sit down in our front row seats, and it's on national TV, and me and Mike and Mr. Adams, we're all smiling. Like, this is really good.
Yeah.
Well, press row's right in front of us. And Brian Windhurst, who is a young writer at the time for the Beacon, is assigned to cover Tuesday Night Fights because Tony Hanshaw is based out of Massillon.
Akron kid, yeah.
And Brian Windhurst turns around and he goes, well, I knew this event tonight was going to bring out some shady characters, and I should have known that you were going to
Brian's been well informed on you for a very long time.
Yes, he's had a good scouting report.
Yes, he has.
So listen, we're going to bring in Tim because we're going to get out of the way. And we're going to try to do a pre-Christmas episode. It might be a post-Christmas episode. I don't know.
Our Christmas episodes in the past must be good because Pete in Painesville wants one. I've been trying. I'm going back through myself. I was like, man, we've been doing this a long time, and we got our own friends going. You guys doing another one of those Christmas pods?
Yeah. But listen, we're gonna call up Tim, and he's gonna be pretty good.
Yeah. Pray for us. We're gonna try to make this work.
I'm gonna tell him this, but we singled this out. He and Terry Pluto.
Mm-hmm.
So go back and listen to that. The Terry Pluto one. Go back and listen to them all. Subscribe, leave a review, tell a friend. It's Christmas time. You have to interact with other people rather than just texting, rather than just tweeting. So please spread the word of the A to Z podcast. A to Z podcast.com, Facebook.com/A to Z podcast. If you're a procrastinator, last minute gifts, gift cards, AmericanFireworks.com. Dre, you're in charge of pressing the buttons tonight.
Oh, that means it's going to work, baby.
All right. Folks, so as we told you, after the Rose Bowl, a legend in Columbus is retiring. That legend is Tim May, longtime Ohio State writer from the Columbus Dispatch. On a personal level, on a professional level, it is our pleasure to bring Tim's retirement tour to the A to Z podcast. Welcome, Mr. May.
Thanks, man. I'll try to keep it together, not cry through this whole thing. Appreciate it.
Well, you've made it this far, Tim. I did a little Google search. Do you know what that is? You know what Google.com is?
Man, I use that. This is the truth now. I was one of the first people to ever write stories on a computer. I mean, I've always been for the latest, greatest. That's why I like Formula One and IndyCar instead of those jalopies. You know what I'm saying? And, so, yes, I know what Google is. I use it 2 times a day.
All right, so I did a little search, and one thing we like to do on this podcast is we kind of talk about how we're getting older and seeing things differently and making better decisions. But Google told us that you started at the Columbus Dispatch in June of 1977, and as old as we are, neither one of us was born then.
Well, get this. I actually started in September of 76 part-time because I'd moved up there from Texas, where I grew up in Lufkin, Texas. Before that, I was born and raised in Alabama. I've got quite the Mississippi River mud background, but the bottom line is I went up here to go to school, and when I moved up there, I could go to Ohio State games, and I ain't go to school. But the bottom line was I started working at the Dispatch in 76 part time and had full time in 77, and here I am.
Why, with all the fun you've had in these 40 plus years, why the hell are you retiring now?
Because I want to retire. Because straight up answer. I have had a lot of fun. I've also worked really hard. As it ain't digging ditches. That is for damn sure. I worked construction my first summer out of high school in Lufkin, Texas. It was 98 degrees every day. And I said, Timbo, you got to do something other than this. And, yeah, I did call myself Timbo for some stupid reason.
Well, you've covered athletes for 40 years. Now you're talking as first person.
Yeah, exactly. No, third person.
Third, my bad.
But anyway, bottom line is I'm tired of working 6 days a week or being on call. When you're a sports writer anymore, especially with shrinking staffs, you guys know this. You literally are like a doctor, except you don't. If you make a mistake, somebody doesn't die. They just laugh or
ridicule you.
They just go on Twitter and call you a dumbass.
Yeah, but the bottom line is I'm just tired of being on call, brothers. I mean, 6 days a week plus being on call wears you out after a while. I think I have literally come to the end of to the edge of my carpet.
Well, I got to tell you this story, Tim, about how excited we are to have you here. So, Andre's on baseball for half the year, so it's hard for us to plan. We just kind of find 30 minutes, 60 minutes, and do it. So when baseball ended, I said, all right, we got to lay 2 days out. We got to do one for Terry Pluto and one for Tim May, who's retiring. And he said, good. And then about a week ago, when the Buster Douglas thing was on, Andre texted me and said, what the hell you been waiting for? We got to have Tim May on.
Yeah, we're like 2 weeks late, man. Shit.
Hey, better late than never, man. At least we ain't Santa Claus.
That's true. Tim, and there's so many things I want to talk to you about, but since the 30 for 30.
Let me interrupt you.
Give it to me. Go ahead.
Man, you like baseball, huh? I don't know how long this interview is going to last.
Hey, man, I had to
cover the Indians' home games and a few road games back in the mid '80s. Oh my God! Number one, they were playing in a dump, and number two, their team looked like a team that was playing in the dump, and it ruined me for baseball for the rest of my life. Now go ahead.
Okay, that's fair enough. I would say something, but I got 2 little kids I got to get into college, so we'll have another conversation off the air. All right, the 30 for 30, and Lord trust, and Zach told a true story. We wanted to talk to you before the 30 for 30 and the Buster Douglas. Boxing isn't boxing like it used to be. We've got MMA and all that other crap. But what was it like to cover a big-time fight? Because to me, I remember my parents in the 80s getting the Sugar Ray fights. Like that was those were the good Saturday nights as a kid growing up, because I knew the parents would be downstairs with all their buddies having a good time, and we would be able to eat pizza and stay up late and watch the fights. But that Buster Douglas fight was a weird one because no one thought he had a chance in hell, but you got to be a part of it and watch all this happen. You were cool as hell on the 30 for 30, and I'm not kissing your ass, it's true. But just go through that, and you said the best thing I've ever heard, that 9th round of that fight may be the best heavyweight round of all time.
Yeah, by the way, this is a podcast, right?
Yeah, so you can say any word you want.
Okay. Well, it kind of pissed me off a little bit because believe me, I love Jeremy Schaap and Ben Hauser, the other guy that produced and set that thing up. That was great. But I know one of the reasons they had me on was because I was the only guy who actually wrote a column the day of the fight and predicted Buster was going to win. And of course, bottom line is he was from Columbus. Like I said, if he had been from Cleveland, I probably wouldn't even have been there.
Right.
There in Tokyo. But I could see it coming. As I said in the thing. I mean, Buster was in the greatest shape of his life. He'd lost his mother. He was inspired by that. To do something that would honor his mother's name. And he was in great shape of his life. And when he was in great shape, as you saw on that, if you watch the video of it. Mm-hmm. He looked like an outside linebacker, baby.
He did.
And Mike Tyson was 5'11" on his tiptoes. And but if Buster could stay away from that uppercut, you saw the fight.
Yeah.
One round he didn't, and it almost cost him. But if he stayed away from that uppercut, he could beat Mike Tyson up. That's exactly what he did. And I literally saw it coming. But to be there, even with Andre, with you even bringing it up a minute ago, it gave me goosebumps. Because it's one of those 2 or 3 things I covered in my career that were just ridiculous. I mean, from the standpoint of the atmosphere, of being there, and of seeing something, that would go down in sports history. And that was definitely that. And the Tokyo Dome, I think it was about 2/3 filled. The Japanese, Mike Tyson was a cult hero over there.
Right.
So as I've likened it, when Buster Douglas pulls the greatest upset in boxing history, maybe in sports history, the crowd was interestingly tepid because it's kind of like, as I said, it's kind of like Ohio State beating Michigan at Michigan,
Right.
There's a few people cheering for you, but for the most part, you just beat their hometown hero. So it was a really weird experience. And then what happened after the fight when they tried to take it away from Buster because of the, quote, long count, end
right.
quote, and things like that. But, as I've told people, real quick, I'll give you a quick anecdote.
Don't be quick. Take your time. Take your time.
What in that 30 for 30, Evander Holyfield and his handlers, Dan Duva and Shelley Tinkle and Donald Trump had flown over the day before the fight to announce the Mike Tyson, Evander Holyfield match. I think it was going to be in May or June of 1990, and it was going to be at one of Trump's hotels in Atlantic City. I can't remember if it was the Taj Mahal or the other one, or the Trump Plaza. But anyway, after they had the press conference, I walked up to Dan Duva, and you remember Dan Duva?
Yeah.
The late Dan Duva now, and Shelley Finkel. I said, "Oh, this is great." I said, "But what happens if Buster beats Tyson? Does he get that fight?" And they both started laughing, and Duva goes, "Oh, that'll never happen." Okay, I'm sitting 4 rows back from the ring in the press section, across from me in the other section is Dan Duva sitting next to Evander Holyfield. And the fifth round, it is clear by then that Buster is beating up Mike Tyson. Mike Tyson's corner workers didn't bring an in-swell, a stainless steel piece that you keep cold to kind of push swelling out of the way if it happens to your guy. They didn't even bring an in-swell to the ring because they thought the thing was going to last less than a round.
Right.
They had what I recognize as being a condom that they put ice in. On the 30 for 30, they conveniently call it a rubber glove.
Rubber glove, yeah.
If you look at a rubber glove, I only see room for one finger.
Well, you know the quote. You know the quote from Tyson is that he said he was over in Japan and he was busting their girls like grapes. That's why he had no legs in the fight. Is the quote.
Oh yeah. He was having a good old time. As I sit in the thing there, on that 30 for 30, he and his camp were on autopilot.
Mm-hmm.
That doesn't mean he wasn't in shape, but he was not in peak shape, great shape, without a doubt. And bottom line was, you can see what's happening. But anyway, between that fifth and sixth round, Dan Duva stands up and he's walking back and forth in the aisle right next to me. And to this day, I think he was smoking. I'm not sure. It was a no-smoking Tokyo Dome. But he's going, I can't believe this. I can't believe this. I just can't believe this. And I wanted to grab him. And say, man, you better believe it because it's happening. But I did. I kept my cool. Anyway, it went on. Buster wins the fight. You know the finish of the story. Right. And I'm sitting there in the Tokyo Dome. There's about 3 or 4 others of us. In this now almost deserted Tokyo Dome about an hour and a half after all the press conferences and stuff. And I'd given these interviews to a lot of journalists over there because they didn't know anything about Buster Douglas,
Right.
And one of them, this Japanese guy, all of a sudden I look up, I noticed him in my corner of my eye, and I look up and he starts bowing to me. He's standing next to me. He starts bowing to me and he goes, you're Mr. May. You pick Douglas. You pick winner. He goes, later, you, me, we drink. And he threw his card down in front of me. I said, man, I appreciate that, but I'm on deadline here. But to this day, it is still the only time I've ever been bowed to, and it felt pretty damn nice.
Well, I'm not going to bow to you, but I love asking journalists this because I'm a radio TV guy, and in my job, you never know what's going to happen. You prepare, but we don't know what's going to happen in the ninth inning, and you don't like baseball, so that doesn't matter. But what was it?
No. I just said I didn't like baseball. My son, my middle kid, was one of the great baseball players you've ever seen. He was on travel teams when he was 8. You know what I mean? He was good.
Right.
I didn't like covering the Major League Baseball because I don't know. I just found those guys to be different characters than football or other players.
I was going to ask you that question, but I got to ask this first. What's the holy shit moment of that fight happening and you do all that and then you have to write a story to encapsulate everything that just had happened? Because as you said, at the end of the day, and easy for us to say 20 years later, it's one of the biggest sports moments of all time.
Well, that's the thing about it. About a boxing match, but especially a heavyweight boxing match. You never know when it's going to end. It's like sudden death from the first bell. Right?
No doubt.
And so you got to be paying attention, and then you get in kind of in a cruise zone, and all of a sudden I'm sitting there in the 7th round thinking, man, all these glorious things I'm going to say about Buster and him living up to the challenge, and because let's face it, if a fight goes a distance, it can still be stolen. We've seen that a million times, and so that's what you had to keep in mind. But then all of a sudden, the 8th round, he gets knocked down. I'm going. I watched Mike Tyson knock out other people. I watched him knock Pinklin Thomas across the ring at the Las Vegas Hilton outdoor ring way back in 87, with a left hook. He knocked him a big 200-something pound man across the ring. I mean, Mike Tyson had it in him to end the fight at any moment. And then it almost happened. So you're sitting there and all those things are going on. But I want to tell you something, fellas. I've only covered 2 sporting events where press row or the press section actually stood up when the moment happened, when the climax happened. And that was the Buster Douglas fight when he knocked Mike Tyson down. As Tyson's going down, almost everybody in the press section is standing up like, oh, my goodness, what did we just see,
Right.
The only time I was sitting about 50 feet on press row at the Spectrum in 92 when Christian Laettner hit that shot for Duke to beat Kentucky.
Yeah.
Same thing happened. Almost everybody on press row stood up like, oh, my God, we just witnessed a classic. And, and what a freaking finish. And, as you know, Christian Laettner didn't miss a shot that day, either field goals or free throws.
He was phenomenal.
Unbelievable. But, yeah, that's what you're feeling. I mean, I get goosebumps right now talking about this. I'm getting goosebumps thinking about that Douglas fight because I knew at what was I then? I was 36 years – no. I hadn't turned 36 yet. I was 35 and 3/4. I knew that I had discovered maybe the biggest moment of my sport trading career.
All right, Tim. So when the Tim May 30 for 30 comes out, right? We have the open scene. We have Bo Bishop in an Argyle sweater welcoming everyone in.
Best dressed
Yeah.
Bo.
Will we
Hey, wait a minute. Let's just hope he hadn't gotten into the bourbon.
In a bourbon and whiskey, yeah.
Yeah, we're going to record at 10 in the morning. So,
Yeah, go ahead.
so are we going to open at the Tokyo Dome, at the Spectrum, at Ohio State, Michigan game? Like, what else can you tell us? What else really stands out over this crazy long career that you've had?
Well, being part of covering, a couple of Ohio State national championships, especially the game at Arizona State Stadium, Sun Devil Stadium, when it looked like it was over, but it wasn't. You know what I mean? That was kind of like the long count in Tokyo when you think about it. That was a crazy night. That was a crazy night. And then of course the national championship in 14 when Urban Meyer comes in. He goes 24-0 his first 24 games as Ohio State coach. Right. Loses 2 in a row in the postseason in 13, the Big Ten championship game, and then the Orange Bowl to Clemson, and then loses the second game of the 2014 season. And you're thinking, well, first he went 12-0. Now he's like 1-3. You know what I mean?
Right.
20 went from 24-0 to 1-3. You're thinking, wait a minute, maybe. And then they make that ridiculous run to the national championship. As I've said, if they voted on the Heisman Trophy like they should at the end of the after the bowl games are over, Ezekiel Elliott would have won the Heisman Trophy that year. But Cardale Jones might have gotten one of the arms. You know what I mean? that would be appropriate, one of the arms. But I forgot, what was the question?
just keep rambling. It's fine.
Well, I mean, what else is on the Tim May 30 for 30?
We're talking about your 30 for 30, but somehow we're giving out the damn Heisman arm now.
Well, I'll tell you what. I wanted to be a jet fighter pilot when I was growing up, and I soloed an airplane. Soloed when I was 16 years old, and found out I couldn't get to the Air Force Academy because I had corrected vision. And by corrected, I'm talking Coke bottle. And I thought they'd still take some, guy, some schlub, but they wouldn't. So I kind of went from I flew planes for a little while, and when I was in high school, buzzed my high school sweetheart's house one time and got yelled at by her dad. But that's another story.
I think that's how we're starting the 30 for 30.
Ran out of money because it even cost money even back then to fly an airplane, and got into sports writing by the back door. I was going to be an engineer like my dad, and then my second year in junior college, I said I'm going to try to become a journalist, maybe a sport. I wanted to be a sports writer. I kind of didn't want to be a journalist. I just wanted to be a sports writer. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
And started doing that. And the next thing you know, I got hired at the Lufkin News. I was 19. I was the youngest sports editor of a daily paper in the state of Texas. And there's a lot of dailies in the state of Texas back then when I was 19 years old, and just basically enjoyed the hell out of it. As I said, the only part I've said this often about my job. I'd have the greatest job in the world if I didn't have to write. You know what I mean?
Right.
But that's a requirement, And but since then I've just had one experience after the other that I've truly enjoyed. Yeah, fellas, one of the greatest football games I ever covered, 1974. Undefeated John Tyler High School from Tyler, Texas. It was a year after
Earl Campbell, right?
It was a year after he went to Texas. His two twin brothers, Tim and Steve, were on that team. And then Lufkin, which was in the Middle East Texas there, which is where I grew up, Lufkin had a great team too. They were undefeated, ranked like number 3 or 4 in the state, whatever it was. John Tyler was second or third in the state. And Lufkin had these two brothers, Elric and Delric Brown. And to put it in perspective for you, think 2. Not 1, but 2 Ted Ginn Juniors.
Damn.
That's what these guys reminded you of. I mean, they were super fast. And that year, Lufkin had the fastest 4x100 relay team in the nation for a while, high school. press box that night. Darrell Royal, Frank Broyles, you remember those guys. Bill Yeoman, Dave Smith, I think was the guy's name from SMU, and Grant Taft from Baylor. And, you know, and this was a Lufkin Stadium. When I say Lufkin's press box, they had a pretty decent press box. I mean, the stadium seated 10,000, you know.
Jeez.
I mean, we're talking about,
Friday
Night Lights. We're
right.
talking about Texas high school football.
Right.
And but that game ended up 7-0, John Tyler. And it was one of the great football games I ever covered. And even to this day, I will attest to that. Of all the great football games I've covered, I mean, I was standing, about 40, 50 feet from the guy who made the intercept, Mike Davis.
You can make up a name. Nobody knows.
I covered the Browns from 79 to 83 before I started covering Ohio State. I covered the Browns and the Bengals. And I'm standing there in the coldest game in NFL history, you know, wind chill factor, when Brian Sipe throws a mistake on the lake.
Red right 88. Get it right, old man.
Yeah. There wasn't much 88 in that one.
Yeah.
But it was like amazing, you know, the stuff I saw. And then I covered the next year when the Bengals went to the Super Bowl. I got to cover the 49ers' first Super Bowl win. And that was my first Super Bowl. I covered 3 in a row there and then moved on to the Buckeyes. But I don't know, man. One of my favorite coverage memories, though, right up there with the Buster Douglas win. This would be in the top 2. This would be the other of the top 2 was when Bobby Rahal won the 1986 Indianapolis 500.
Yeah.
I was in the pits the last 25, 30 laps of that race in Bobby Rahal's pit, and I was sitting next to Jim Truman, his team owner. They were from, you know, Hilliard, Ohio is where the team was based. And Jim Truman was dying of cancer. He would die 11 days later. And, man, I get goosebumps and almost tear up, though, just thinking about how that whole race worked out. And Bobby Rahal was able to deliver Jim Truman victory, his much-coveted victory in the Indianapolis 500 11 days before he died. Wow, that's still a big one. I mean, that's right up there. I know, you know, people don't like auto racing, but I covered almost every one of the Cleveland Grand Prix. Grand Prix or Grand Prixes.
You're from Texas. You can call it whatever the hell you like.
And I covered almost every one of those, including the debut in 1982. And ironically, that was Bobby Rahal's first win in an Indy car. So,
wow.
Yeah, I've been around. I'm boring myself now. So,
it's good. I actually like racing, so you're all right. You're with the gearhead right now. You're with the black gearhead. You don't get a lot of those. I bet you never went through that, Tim, did you?
As I said, my 3 main things I ever covered were auto racing, football, and boxing. 2 where they wear a helmet, and 1 where they should.
Tim, what is a bigger matter of life or death, Ohio State, Michigan, or Texas high school football?
Well, I think it really is Texas high school football. Only I'm talking about in a grudge match game, because usually for a senior, you know, there aren't many guys get to play in 3 of those, you know, or even 2.
Right.
So that's where Friday Night Lights got it kind of right. You know what I mean? That scene where, you know, you're going to remember this for the rest of your life, you know, type thing. And but Ohio State, Michigan, man, wow. I mean, have I been blessed, because I saw Alabama-Auburn games. I grew up in Alabama. You know, my first 11 years, my dad took me and my older brother Ben. I had 3 brothers, but he took the 2 older ones to Alabama home games from 61 to 64. So I saw Joe Namath play. As I said before HBO did, I saw him play on 2 good knees. Unbelievable. And then so I got to see Alabama-Auburn 3 times way back when. And then I got to cover Texas-Oklahoma games back in the mid-'70s when I was at the Lufkin News before I moved up here to go to Ohio State games. Oh, and also go to college. I keep emphasizing that. Like John Belushi. 7 years of college down the toilet. But the Ohio State Michigan game, man, it's just amazing, guys, what I've seen, because during the Cooper years when they went 2-10-1, you really thought this is never going to end, you know?
Right.
Now, the last 18 games, Ohio State 16-2, and in my opinion, that's what makes rivalries is when you beat another team so bad that it hurts their feelings. You know what I'm saying?
No doubt.
And to get to that 16th win in the last 18 Ohio State not only beat Michigan, they beat them 62-39. They scored more points on Michigan than any team has ever scored on Michigan in a regular season game. Holy smokes! But I've always enjoyed covering that game, and it's really funny because I've gotten to see kind of like an oil tanker turn, in that series.
Right.
Because when an oil tanker's going in one direction, it's hard to make it turn. But then you get it going the other direction, it's hard to turn it back. And I think Michigan fans have found that out the hard way.
No doubt. Let me ask you this. With Urban Meyer having one game to coach, and for the young kids that listen to our podcast, we still got to enlighten them a little bit. Give us something on Urban Meyer that the average fan that's from afar only sees the press conferences, sees him coaching, that maybe you've picked up on that signifies who he is. And I think the coolest thing that you have going for you, and I'm sure people in Columbus and people from afar, you've been able to cover Tressel. You've been able to cover Errol Bruce. You've been able to cover, obviously, Urban. And you went through all the different ups and downs of the program. But what stands out about Urban to you that you won't forget about maybe 10, 15 years when you're sitting around on a hammock drinking a beer?
I'll be laying in the hammock.
God damn it, I knew I shouldn't have went too far. I should have said, tell me about Urban Meyer.
Hopefully I'll have a pillow, but that's another story. I've laid in a hammock without a pillow. It's not comfortable.
No, you ever fall out of it? You ever fall out of a hammock? I have fallen out of one.
I almost did. Matter of fact, we've got a hammock we've got a big pond in our front yard. I got like 4.5 acres and 3 horses, but we got a big hammock in our front yard between 2 pine trees, and it's the most comfortable place in the world in the summer, I'm telling you, but I digress. Here's the thing about Urban that I don't understand how people get agendas about people and just don't pay attention or don't notice the other stuff, if you follow my drift.
I do.
And, Urban started these real life Wednesday programs when he first came out. I think he'd had them at Florida for a little while, but it's just a deal where they bring in every Wednesday during the off season, and sometimes even during the season, but it's usually during the off season. They bring in people from around all different walks of life. Like they had Jamie Dimon in, from the Chase. JP Morgan Chase, everybody's heard of Jamie Dimon, to talk to the players about, opportunities and things like that in the banking world and stuff like that. They've had different people from all walks of life. I mean, from the publishing to real estate to, legal lawyers and things like that. But and the thing about it is, Urban's he doesn't just set these things up and then go about his merry way, ruling his kingdom. He sits in on them. So I got to sit in on this session a couple of years ago before the 2016 elections, where he had different speakers come in over a 3-week period to talk to the players about voting rights, and let's face it, the majority of the Ohio State football team is African American, and they traced, the history of, and granted, they get these in history classes, I'm sure, but this is just to reinforce Urban Meyer's point was you owe it not only to yourself but to your country and to your race and your fellow man to vote and to inform yourself. But they had different people come in and talk to them, the players, about the fight for the right to vote, especially by African Americans and the sacrifices that were made from the Civil War and Abe Lincoln all the way through, Truman and then John F. Kennedy, followed primarily by Lyndon Baines Johnson and the voting rights, the Civil Rights Act and stuff. And the thing about it was, Urban at these sessions, and he does. I said in a few more of these. Also, he would the next session, he would get up. He'd have notes he'd made of his own, and he would quiz people call them out, and ask them, what did we learn here? Because the players were all required to either take notes, or if you're not taking notes, you better know what people said. And he was so involved in that it wasn't fake, if you follow my drift, For sure. And that's just like just a glimpse of some of the stuff he's done. But he started this job fair thing for players way back 7 years ago, where he brings in they bring in like 100 or so different job, employers from around, Central Ohio and sometimes from around the state, just to talk to the players about possible job opportunities when they're done with football. His big goal, as he stated last year, wasn't just to get players hooked up with possible future employers, but to get players job offers. You know what I mean? Out of these things. And, because football, as he's points out to him all the time, football is not for long, including the NFL. And sooner or later, somebody tells you your career's over. Now what are you going to do? And I know that sounds mamby-pamby, and, there are people probably right now throwing, half-loaded beer cans at their I hope they're not throwing it at their iPhone, but you know what I mean.
We know.
From their hammocks, you know what I mean?
Yes, from their hammocks, yes.
But the bottom line is, that's just like a glimpse of what he's about more than football. But guys, let's face it, football and winning more football games at a percentage that's third all time behind Newt Rockne and Frank Leahy. That's the reason Urban Meyer got to do what he does and got to do it for as long as he did, is because he delivered on the field.
Yep.
But he felt like the players deserved more than that. And he said that really hit home to him, when he had daughters who grew up and became pretty good volleyball players and then went off to college, and they used volleyball to help, not that they needed to have their way paid,
right,
but they were scholarship people. And they were able to use that to move on to a better spot in life. And so, if you're cynical and you choose not to listen to any of that, but just look at the other stuff, then that's too bad for you.
Tim, we're 5 days from Christmas now, but if we would have had this conversation 3-4 months ago, would you have guessed that Urban was going to step on your toes and call it quits after this year?
First, let me digress. I'm talking to you guys. I'm sitting right outside of Macy's here at the Total Mall, where I'm going right after I hang up. Speaking of waiting till the last minute.
You got a couple days.
But I digress. If you had asked me when he had me and 3 other guys in his office after the Purdue game, the week after the Purdue game, when I think it was Kirk Herbstreit who had said something about how Urban looked like he was in anguish on the sidelines, and obviously he's getting his butt beat 49-20. He's not going to look chipper. But Urban has been dealing with this cyst in his head between his skull and his brain since 1998, when it was first diagnosed, while he was assistant coach at Notre Dame. And you could tell while he was talking with us, and the story I wrote and others wrote, leaving that session, as I said in my story, he said he was going to coach as long as he could, which had never come out of his mouth before, which meant, in my opinion, I think he already had a step out the door. And because, a lot of things went on this year, fellas, from what happened in late summer, him being suspended throughout preseason camp and in the first 3 games of the year. By the way, as I'm sitting here in my vehicle, this lady pulled up right in front of me, and she's doing her Christmas list, and she's got her headlights on, and they're shining right in my eyes, and I'm starting to get a headache myself. But I digress. But I don't want to beef at her because she's got the Christmas spirit. It's obvious.
Dude, you're gonna go crazy in retirement because you got to tell these stories to somebody. Nobody's want to listen to this. You got a right still.
When you get to be, I'm gonna be 65 in March. That's the reason I'm retiring. And I'll just when you get that age, you can just mutter to yourself, and people think it's just that's anyway.
That's why we had you on, Tim.
I had a sense from then that a lot of things had just kind of caught up with him at once. He was not happy with the way he was treated by the university, with that suspension stuff. Over the Zach Smith, Courtney Smith situation, because the investigation they didn't find that he had ignored obvious signs of domestic violence and stuff. And of course, to this day, obviously, Zach Smith still has never been charged with anything in that regard or arrested about it. But that's another story. But this thing he's dealing with in his head was real. I mean, imagine waking up every morning with a very large cyst in your head. That if things don't go just right, or if you have a stress moment or what you call a grip moment, you know what I mean? Like you have on the sidelines probably 10 times a game, or when you guys are doing your jobs or I'm doing our job, and suddenly you're struck with just almost a debilitating headache. That's what he was dealing with, and the prospect of dealing with that for, basically the rest of his life. But, as I told him, though, it said, no matter what happens, whether you stay in coaching or not, I think you still got to get that thing dealt with again. He had an operation in 2014 that released some of the pressure, released some of the swelling, but it's always got to come back. And I'm talking about the swelling part.
Right.
And so, but yeah, to answer your question, I could have done this a lot quicker. Yes, I had a feeling that this could be his last season. I should have just left it at that.
Nah,
well, that's your style.
Yeah, you don't ever change who you are. Come on now, Tim. Today it's weird. I did radio up here in Cleveland, and my producer goes to me, "Hey, it's signing day." And being a kid that grew up in Northeast Ohio my whole life, I go, "No, dude, that's in February." For a guy that's covered and being from Texas and covered in Texas and being in Columbus as long as you have,
yeah.
Be honest. What do you make of all this the shenanigans that are signing days and early signing days and what we've made it into? Because the media plays into this with everything else. They've become something that we've never seen before.
Well, if you listen to our podcast, which is you can get it at BuckeyeExtra.com, which Bill Rabinowitz and I just did, I called it, calling it early signing period is incorrect now. It should be called the primary signing period because that's where Ohio State signed the bulk of its class last year. And the first time they ever did this. And this year they signed 15. They're probably not going to have more than 18 or 19 players in this class, barring a mass exodus to the NFL, because they don't have room for more than that. So they signed 15 of probably their 18, 19, or 20 players today. And, I've always been for if a youngster knows where he's going, and is sold on it, why can't he just go ahead and sign a letter of intent no matter where it is, when it is? It goes on the record, and that's that. But I understand also about fair play. And then, for example, in this case, the reason Urban Meyer, one of the main reasons he made his announcement that he was retiring that first full week in December was because he knew it was going to affect recruiting, but he thought it was the honest thing to do with players, because he sat in many of players' living rooms with their parents and told them how, he's going to look after their kid, A, B, C, D, you know what I mean?
Right.
And he knew that he wasn't going to be doing that with this signing class, and that it was whether it was going to hurt Ohio State or not, the time was there to put all the cards on the table, and with Gene Smith announcing Ryan Day as his successor, and to be honest about it, and they did. Turns out they lost a couple of commitments to the 2020 class. They lost a safety today, but he actually pretty much decommitted. He just didn't announce it right after Urban Meyer made his retirement announcement. But Jordan Battle, a kid from Fort Lauderdale, St. Thomas Aquinas, he signed with Alabama today. And, of course, the news flashes were flips from Ohio State. Well, Ohio State knew they weren't getting him in the first place today. You know what I mean?
Right.
And then they lost a quarterback today, that Dwan Mathis kid from Oak Park, Michigan, who's never visited Georgia, but he signed with Georgia today because the rumor out there is that Justin Fields, the quarterback who's leaving Georgia, the freshman who only played sparingly this year, one of the top quarterbacks in the country in the 2018 signing class, 5-star, is leaving Georgia, and the rumor is he's going to end up probably at Ohio State or possibly Oklahoma or Florida State. So Dwan Mathis didn't waste any time. He jumped. But my point is they had some effects from it, but not as much as you would think.
Tim, I know you got to get into Macy's and buy this stuff, so this might
I'm burning a hole in my wall.
This might be my last question, and it's not so much a question
because of you.
It's kind of an open-ended statement, which I know you'll take and run with for 7 minutes, and that's why we love you. But you've talked about saying things to Dan Duva. You talked about sharing a press box with Darryl Royal. Now things are so neutered and cut off, and rare is the real access. So, just what do you think about how the business has changed, and has it really changed that drastically in terms of those moments where you write about someone for years, but often you don't really know them?
That's exactly what's happened. I had a famous line one time. I used to be the only guy at Ohio State practices, like when they were over, and because I think the guy was competing against me from the other paper in town at that point was kind of lazy. Then Bruce Healy showed up, and things changed in my life. But the bottom line was, my famous line was, I not only knew all the players and all their names, by face, but I also knew all their kids' names.
San Antonio Holmes, that was a lot of kids, my friend.
Yeah. Well, there was one old dude whose name, I think he had about 7 while he was out. But that's another story. But yeah, I mean, the access on the college level, I've seen it go. I mean, I used to be at every practice, and like Earl Bruce, his famous line was, nobody ever wanted to come to practice till I closed it, and he was right. I mean, he would close practice 1 week out of the season for a big game other than Michigan, and always close it the week of the Michigan game. But otherwise, you could sit there and watch practice. You could talk to coaches coming off the field. You could talk to players. You could talk to Earl every day. When John Cooper showed up, it was pretty much the same setup for like the first probably 7 or 8 years. And I love John Cooper. I'll never forget the day when he told me that, because I used to just show up, knock on his door, and he said, "Come on in, Tim," and we sit there and shoot the bull for a while. And I'll never forget the day he told me that he couldn't do that anymore because he'd had some other people trying to do the same thing, Right. And but while he was telling me he couldn't do it anymore, we talked for like 35 minutes.
You probably did all the talking from.
He didn't have time, for that. Meanwhile, we talked for 35 minutes, but he didn't have enough time.
All right, so one last follow.
Under Tressel, it really tightened up, and of course, under Urban, we haven't watched a full practice except for the spring game in several years, and they wince almost when we're allowed in practice. I mean, it's and that's just the way it is. But with all the .coms and everything out there, and it's just hard for them to quote unquote police, even who's there, much less. I mean, I remember what caused Tressel to start closing practices was like in the early 2000s, and some guy from a new startup.com, because that's all they were back then in the early 2000s were startups. He came in and decided he charted everything they did in practice, all the formations they ran, and put it on the internet. I'm just going, wow,
Right.
And Tressel, of course, said something other than wow, I'm sure, but that was the end of open practices, So anyway, but yeah, do I miss that? Hell yeah.
Yeah.
Well, or let me before Zach says this. What's the biggest difference? We always ask this to people that have been in the business longer than us, and we appreciate seeing guys be able to have success this long in their career. And this isn't kissing your ass. This is just being honest. But what's the biggest difference in the business today, and have kids changed in your mind in the 40-plus years that you've covered them?
I think kids in some respects are a little more aware of stuff.
Yeah.
Because of the social media, and I don't think they're anywhere near as polite or cordial or whatever you want to call it, in some respects.
Right.
But then there are great guys. I mean, I'll tell you what, two fellas I enjoyed covering as much as anybody I've ever covered were the two Bosa brothers, and they could have been the biggest, whats. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? Because they are. They're the big guy on the block, and but example, I mean Anthony Gonzalez is one of my favorite people of all time. I mean, now he's in the House of Representatives.
House of Reps, right?
Yeah, so maybe I'll get a tour of the White House now. Or maybe Capitol grounds. But the bottom line is, there have been great guys who've come and gone, man. Somebody on a radio show a couple of weeks ago asked me, who's your favorite player? I go, man, I could name you 500. You know what I mean? Eddie George, to this day, is one of the great guys I've ever met. And he's one of the, he's like a real guy who was just the biggest superstar you ever met. You know what I mean? He won the freaking Heisman Trophy and he went on to be a stud in the NFL. But at least his relationship with me never changed.
And now he's doing to play Chicago here in Cleveland. He's it's unbelievable.
Eddie George is he is the cosmopolitan man, or whatever you want to, whatever that term. What's the word I'm missing there? It's not cosmopolitan.
You're the veteran here. You figure it out.
He is Mr. Cosmopolitan. He is one of the great human beings you're ever going to meet, and one of the most diverse, curious. That's the word I use for him and like Anthony Gonzalez and just this year. We hardly ever get to talk to these guys, but you try to foster a little bit of a relationship with them when you can. Dwayne Haskins Jr. What a joy to cover. I mean, just he'll answer questions. He doesn't mind talking about himself a little bit. You follow my drift there?
Mm-hmm.
Not just about the team and the team. And I mean, it's boy, you just opened a can of worms there, and there's a lot of worms crawling around on my table now, and it's kind of hard to catch them all. But yeah, I mean, just right through the years, I've just had great moments with a lot of these guys, which I will cherish. I mean,
right.
Kirk Barton's one of the great people I've ever met. I mean, just in terms of just wow, what a character,
Yeah.
And man, Orlando Pace, still to this day, a great guy.
I want pancakes.
And you've never seen a youngster walk onto a college football campus when he was a freshman who looked like he was already in the NFL. I mean, that was just incredible to watch him, watch that whole Orlando Pace presence, but then to know that still to this day he's one of the great guys you're ever going to meet.
Right. Tim, last thing, that Google machine said you've missed 3 Ohio State games in your time on the beat. Is that right? Just 3?
I like that Google machine. It's like that guy on a Fast and Loud. He calls it the interweb. Yeah, they were. I had to cover the Ohio State. I had to cover the Columbus 500 way back in the mid '80s when Columbus was trying to be like Cleveland and have a street race. You know what I mean?
Okay.
And the one I usually didn't miss anything. I covered it and covered covered Ohio State football games. But that year, for some reason, the Ohio State football game was on the road in Illinois, so I did not cover that game that year. But I wrote all the stories leading up to it and all the stories afterwards. You know what I mean? But it was important that I be at the race because, as I explained, racing's hard to cover because usually the first car across the finish line wins usually. Holy smokes! And then in 1998, I covered Bobby Rahall's last ride, which was a race in Fontana, California, on the oval there, the 2-mile oval, and that was the week Ohio State played Indiana. And guess what? It was also the week before Ohio State played Michigan State. We all remember that game, right?
Yes.
Yeah. Michigan State upsets number 1 Ohio State. And then the last one, and this is the best anecdote of them all, and my older son, Kyle, gets mad when I tell it, was he and his fiancée, Stephanie, came up to me in April of 2014 and said, "Dad, we got the church. We finally got the church." Because she was from a Greek Orthodox family, and they were trying to get married in the Greek Orthodox church. That's another story for the next podcast.
We don't talk church here, Tim.
But there was a George Costanza moment in that whole thing, too. You remember where he had to learn the new religion? Remember that?
Yes.
My son had to do the same thing. But I digress. They said, "Yeah, Dad, we got the church. It's September the 6th. And I looked at him, and I said, "Well, do you know why you got the church September the 6th? And they go, "No." I said, "Because Ohio State's playing Virginia Tech that night." And they went, "Oh, no, they're not." And they had been going on some schedule from 2 years earlier where the game was still scheduled on some other,
right,
day or whatever. Which I'm looking at. I'm like, there's no way you live in Columbus don't know Ohio State's playing Virginia Tech on September 6th,
right,
especially if you're Tim May's son. But so that was the other one, and I was told in no uncertain terms I was not going to be at that game, if you know what I mean by the person who still to this day, Susie May, gives me marching orders. But the great thing was they at their reception that night was at this place right across the street from this sports bar, and I figured out pretty early on that my wife was not keeping up with me. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Oh yeah.
You know what I mean?
We know.
So I went back and forth to that sports bar probably 15 times. You know what I mean? And,
I've been there.
I was there, but I wasn't there. Wink, wink.
Well, Tim, listen, we appreciate it. This was mandatory for you to bring your retirement tour to our podcast. We appreciate it, and we are like that Japanese guy 30 years ago. We bow to you.
Yes.
We thank you for this.
Actually, I prefer the genuflect, but bow, I will take a bow.
All right, we'll genuflect as well. And when you get bored in like 8 months, Send one of us a text message, and we'll do this again.
Yeah, just call us up.
You're going to be bored. You're going to be bored, and we got you.
I can tell all kinds of stories about getting flipped upside down in an airplane. And I'm the only one in it. I mean,
and you live to talk about it. Hey, have you ever covered drag racing, or are you just into that?
I covered the Spring Nationals from 1984, 85.
When it used to be in Columbus. Yeah, now it's down in Norwalk, right?
Oh yeah.
And Ray Hall's son's now with John Force's daughter, right?
Yes, exactly. And he doesn't get drag racing just like I don't get drag racing, because I told him these people are all great people to deal with. I mean, even John Force is one of the wacky guys.
He's a whack job, yes.
Just hang with. Yeah. But I mean, I said I've never understood working on your car for 2 hours and running for 5 seconds.
For a 5-second pass.
Sounds like my dating life.
Tim, let me break it down like this. It's real simple. Drag racing is the 100 meters of racing, man. You're into that long race. You're into like Winter Olympics. You got to get with us and be in that fast stuff, man. Get it over with in 10 seconds.
I'll tell you what I'm into. I'm into racing where you got to turn it at least a little bit. But when you turn it in a drag car, you're in
trouble. If you're turning in a drag car, you're in trouble.
Yes. You know what? Usually when you turn it in a drag car, you're too late too, man.
Yeah, no kidding. I'm gonna tell you.
I'll tell you what. I give it up to anybody that will strap himself into a top fuel or a funny car and go from 0 to 60 in 0.6 of a second or whatever it is.
Right.
And this thing, you're going where that car wants to go.
Exactly.
My drift.
You're strapping into a rocket.
I mean, yeah. The funny thing is when I first started covering it, the big bragging point was top fuel cars with those Keith Black V8 engines in them, fully blown, 500 cubic inches, 499 cubic inches. They supposedly they developed something like 3,200 horsepower. Now they claim those same engines with those superchargers developed 10,000 horsepower, and I'm not sure I believe that.
Well, the other thing that's crazy about drag racing, and they're killing themselves, and I know like half of our listeners just turned off, and that's all right, screw them. But the other thing is, Tim, like a pass for a top fuel or a funny car is over $1 million a pass now. Imagine pissing away over $1 million for 4 seconds.
Wait, are you sure about that?
Yes. Really? Why do you think Pro Stock is going through the problem? See, I'm a gearhead. Pro Stock's going through problems as well. Yeah, you can tell now the real me's coming out. Pro Stock's going through the same issues because it costs so much money for their cars to go down the track.
That's true.
If it's not $1 million, Tim, it's not far away. One pass.
I think you're thinking more like $1 million, maybe a weekend or something. But still.
It's over $1 million a weekend. I know some guys that tune top alcohol cars, and like my dad's did.
I know alcohol.
Yeah, you do. My dad's done super.
That's my favorite thing. It used to be my favorite thing to do when I covered that was to watch them, what I called pour money into their gas tank. You know what I mean?
Tim.
Man, I got, some of my great stories. I mean, Shirley Muldowney, she used to drive,
Cha-Cha, yeah.
Got to know her really well. I mean, Don Prudhomme, one of the great guys ever.
The Snake.
The Swamp Rat, Big Daddy.
Big Daddy.
Oh, my goodness, man. I mean,
Zach's looking at me right now like I got 5 heads, and I'm in love because I love this. I know exactly what you're talking about.
Let me put it this way. You may not like racing, but if you're not intrigued by a vehicle that can go that fast, that quickly, then, you're not alive.
Yeah, you ain't breathing.
That's why I like Indy cars. Indy cars at Indianapolis Motor Speedway, they're going more than twice as fast as Nolan Ryan's fastball. You know what I mean?
Right.
And there's a man in it.
For like 3.5. Well, there was a woman too, but she got in a lot of wrecks.
Well, Danica, man, I was there when she broke through. Man, it was kind of a big deal. Then she was actually better than most people.
She was,
remember, but that's life.
She shouldn't have went to NASCAR, but that's my opinion.
There's a lot of wankers in racing that couldn't beat her.
Tim, I'm gonna call you back, and we're gonna do a podcast on racing. Screw Zach.
Well, yeah, we'll just get half the crowd and we'll roll with it.
Absolutely.
Put the pedal to the metal and hit the nitro button.
You are my man.
He's going into Macy's, and he's going out on top. He's Tim May. For Andre, I'm Zach. We'll see you next time on the A to Z podcast.
Take care, Tim.
Hey, I'm headed to Macy's to spend some of that drag racing money. See you,
there you go.